All righty.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this meeting of the Audit Committee on October 12th, 2021. Sarah, I think you're going to do the roll call.
I will. Yes, we are meeting by video conference today. So our New York City office is open for the public where there are no attendees. And in attendance today for board members, we have our board chair, Al Carney, John Johnson, John Gardner, yourself, the chair of this committee, Joan Sullivan, Beryl Snyder, Ken Evans for board members. And for DASNY staff, we have Ruben McDaniel, Paul Koopman, Portia Lee, Kim Ellis, Kathy Ebert, Karen Ellinger, Caroline Griffin, Nadine Fontaine, Lee Zhu, Paul Koopman, Diane Folletti, and myself, Sarah Richards. And joining us from KPMG, we have Jeff Coach, Marie Zimmerman, and Ryan Kenyon. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Do we need to read the legal notification?
Nope. And I should note Ricardo Salomon is also with us. Apologies for missing him the first time. The governor did sign into law in September authorization to meet by video conference, which we are doing today. So we'll simply note that, and I'll turn it back over to you with that.
Okay. Behind everyone's electronic tab 3 in their electronic board book should be the minutes from our last audit committee meeting. If anyone has any comments, changes, please voice them now. If not, could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Make the motion to approve the minutes.
Can I get a second? Someone?
I will second. It's Beryl.
Thank you, Beryl. Is anyone opposed? Hearing that no one is opposed, the motion passes unanimously. Can we say that it passes unanimously? Ricardo, how do you feel about that? I think it passed unanimously. Okay.
That's fine. I'm sorry, I was on mute. Yes, that's
Okay.
fine, provided there was no objections.
Yes, no objections and no abstentions were
And then no
articulated.
abstentions, then it passes unanimously.
Yes, okay. We have a couple of annual items that we pick up each time around this year, around this time of year. The audit committee charter and the internal audit charter. There have not been any changes proposed to either document. I guess what we need to do is have a motion to submit both the audit committee charter and the internal audit charter for approval at the board meeting tomorrow. Am I getting this right?
Oh, John, the committee just reviews them. So
Okay.
as long as there are no changes, we'll simply note that for the record and we can move on. Nothing further is required.
There are no changes. Good. Okay. Then now I can hand it over to KPMG. Marie Zimmerman is here. Jeffrey Coach is here. And Ryan Kenyon is with us, and they are going to give us their annual audit plan report.
Thank you, John, and committee members and members of management. We are happy to be here today, although remotely, to present our audit plan for the year ended March 31st, 2022. Moving to slide 1, because we do have a few slides today to go through, but we will cover them as quickly as possible because I know some of this information we've provided before. But at any moment, if you have any questions throughout, please just stop us and raise your hand, and we're happy to have an open dialogue. So KPMG's commitment to you, we have been working with DASNY and members of management for a long time, but every year we strive to provide exceptional client experience. So we continue to reevaluate and work with management to ensure they're getting the experience that they deserve as one of our premier accounts. In that, we also look at KPMG's productivity and challenge ourselves to try to be as efficient and effective as possible with management's times, as well as provide insight as a technical resource to management. Moving on to slide 2, I just want to highlight, because we're going to talk a little bit today about ESG. So I just wanted to note what KPMG is doing. As a part of our governance in our 2025 goals, we're trying to have 50% of our partners and MDs be from underrepresented groups, including doubling of Black representatives, and as well as in our workforce. So this is a commitment that we have made. We're trying to work through it, and this is part of our ESG and our journey. So we don't want to just walk the walk. We don't want to just talk the talk. We want to walk the walk with you as we go through that. So moving to the next slide through the executive summary. This is just some of the areas that we're going to hit upon today. Modernizing the audit, we're going to talk a little bit about that. Risk in our planned audit report, in our planned audit approach, are some of the required communications in accordance with AICPA, and then the scope of our audit. Moving to the next, right along to the next slide, there is a new member of the team that was introduced by John earlier, and that's Ryan Kenyon. And it's a very good story. I am so proud to say that Jeff Coach has been promoted to Audit Managing Director. So Jeff Coach will be taking a lead parallel with myself as a lead audit partner this year, and Ryan will come on as a lead engagement manager. Ryan has worked with both of us for over 5 years on various state audits and has extensive GASB and New York State auditing experience. Omni Papel will be returning. Our IT professionals, as well as our subject matter professionals, will all be returning members. We also will continue to work with 2 subcontracting firms that meet the MWBE requirements as certified for the state of New York, and that is Long Island Financial Management Services and Vallis Vadora, whom we both worked with in the past. I do want to just say congratulations to Jeff. This is a succession plan for myself. I am coming on my 5th year as a lead audit partner, and will have to, for the state of New York, and we'll have to rotate off of any of the component units as well as the state effective after this audit period. Moving to our next slide, as I noted about our ensuring the audit quality of our service, as well as the experience for you, some of are planned to enhance that audit experience for our 22 efforts. I know it says 21, but some of these items we put in place in 21 and we're going to continue through 22, is the use of our KPMG Clara site, where we can collaborate and share data protectively and seamlessly, regardless of the size of the data. We're also going to continue to expand and use our data analytics and our automation and throughout the audit as well. And this usage will also roll into our open communication and dialogue with management. We have ongoing meetings with management throughout the audit, and we'll continue to provide them real-time snapshots of where we are in the audit and the status of that to ensure that there's no surprises. Moving to the next slide, the landscape, what's going on in our environment, DASNY's environment. COVID is still here. It's still a part of the business landscape. It's still a part of our everyday working environment. In addition, that brings some of the risks such as cybersecurity. I talked about that we're going to talk about today of the new initiatives in the marketplace of ESG and diversity. The audit is being performed around you, management, who has a responsibility for financial reporting to meet the state's deadline. That is a quick turnaround with a March 31st year end to report to the state of New York by June 30th. But that turnaround is greatly appreciated every year, I know, by the State Office of Comptroller to be able for them to meet their statutory requirement deadline, which is 120 days after the state's year end. How are we going to conduct the audit? We will, as I noted, utilize software tools this year and work very closely with management throughout the audit planning period, as well as our year end. I did want to, I've noted a couple times, they talked about the rise of ESG. So moving to the next slide, ESG, environmental, social, and governance. DASNY is kind of on the forefront of this. I have been working with DASNY since 2012 and always amazed about your diversity, your inclusions, your initiatives throughout the bond offering, the construction periods of the entities that you work with. So what does that mean today? Why is this a topic that KPMG is discussing? Well, that's because the SEC has been looking into this. They actually have in February 21 announced focus on climate-related disclosures. They're in a public proposal. It's expected to be coming out for what SEC requirements would be. NASDAQ has already come out and made requirements around board member diversity to even be listed as a NASDAQ entity. The Value Reporting Foundation was formed in June of 2021 through the merger of the Sustainability Accounting Standards Boards and the International Integrated Reporting Council. There's a Global Reporting Initiative, GRI, the World Economic Forum, stakeholders and capitalist metrics was formed. So even the UN Principle of Responsibility Investing is looking into ESG. So in our reporting environment of a public accountant, as well as yourselves who have a public debt out in the bond market, it's a topic that is being continuously evolving and being a focus on. I think DASNY is positioned so well to be a little bit on the forefront of that. And so Jeff, can you move to the next slide? So the ESG journey, a lot of companies are still in phase one. They're just assessing where the standards reportings are. They're trying to design phase two of what their ESG would look like. What are they doing for economic, social governance? And then maybe they're starting to implement and sustain. I met with management since the last audit committee presentation that I conducted, and management has talked about that for environmental and social, DASNY is already at the sustain size. They're continuing to evolve and work on their governance. They're getting really close, a lot closer in that implementation stage, but they already have some of their design stage looked at, whether that's the implementation of a new D&I officer who's putting the programs in place and working through it. So where does this relate to your external auditor? On the next slide is that we can provide assurance to the marketplace, to the construction, to the bond market, and that level of assurance that we already are providing, whether it's to the state of New York for your investment activities in the form of an agreed upon procedures, or just to the market at large through the financial reporting process. In talking with management, we're looking at this as KPMG meeting with them in the coming weeks and months to evaluate and assess where they are at in each of these three buckets in each of those phases, to hopefully put a plan in place to be able to give a level of assurance by FY23. So the goal would be, let's start with assessing gap assessments, anything of that nature, recommendations that KPMG could provide, so that management can then have an actionable items that they can continue to assess, whether if they're already in that implementation or put in place, and then be able to quantify what that looks like, that then KPMG could give a level of assurance on it. I look forward to working with management on this new initiative because I think it's really a great opportunity for DASNY to shine. So with that, I will open it up for any questions if anyone has it. If not, I'll turn it over to Jeff Coach to go through some of the required communications in accordance with the AICPA.
Marie, it's Al Carney. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Terrific. How are you, first of all?
Good, good.
Good. Your couple of things. I'm really unclear on what companies mean now when they say diversity. Equity and inclusion, I do understand. They're pretty well-defined terms. DEI has become what folk say without putting an adjective before diversity. I never used the word effectively until somebody reminded me that when I first heard it years and years ago, it was always used with an adjective. Racial diversity, geographic diversity, gender diversity, and on and on. I applaud KPMG's announcement, in effect, that you all are looking for a 50% diversity aspect of your workforce, particularly your senior workforce. Does it extend to the board? And if so, what does it mean? Does the KPMG board expect that it will have 50% diversity, whatever it means, in a given period of time?
Yes, I believe it does, Al. Because we brought on 2 board members that are external to KPMG, both of
Sure.
which are
Independent board members who represent a diversity
Yeah.
definition. Okay.
absolutely. And then we even within our recruitment application, it goes through an extensive individuals, any partner could apply to be on the board, and then all the partners vote for it.
Oh, wow.
yep.
Okay.
That is one of the aspects that we are trying, our goal is, let's ensure there's like diversity, that we're meeting that 50% diversity, that we're holding upon ourselves for our workforce, for our partners, and for our board as well. So again, that definition of diversity we've defined for ourselves.
Mhm.
I think companies can define it for themselves as well. And it is to sometimes broad in that nature, in terms of I would be a representative of that diversity. And I would be proud to be a part of,
Sure.
proud.
Sure. I applaud KPMG's effort. I'm not being critical in the slightest bit. I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to say to your clients and to your competitors and to the world out there. Just curious to know how far it goes, and you've just helped me to explain. Will you come back at some point and tell us? Well, maybe not you, maybe.
We actually have for our US KPMG US firm a diversity, equity, and inclusion transparency report that, just like our audit quality transparency report, we're going to be putting out and holding ourselves accountable to.
Thank you very much, Marie. No more questions from me.
Okay, and I can commit to providing that to you, Al.
When it's available, Marie. Thank you.
Marie, that was great. That was not the standard audit plan report. That was great.
Well, John, just wait. We still have to go through our required communication. So
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, no, Marie leaves the best part for me usually, so I'll take it from here. And then again, I think you've heard a lot of this before. We'll go through the matters of it to communicate what we're required to communicate, and kind of leave it a little lighter than maybe what's been in the past, and highlighting some more of the changes and things like that. And what better way to start than with our overall audit report for the 2021 audit, 2022 audit here. This is not new to you. You saw this at our presentation last year, but for this coming year, there will be a change in the format of the audit report. There are a couple auditing standards that have changed that are going to kind of change what that report looks like and what's included into it. Primarily what you'll see is that the opinion will be presented first, followed by a paragraph of how that opinion was found, the basis for that opinion. It'll include a statement that's required about the independence of the entity to meet the auditor ethical requirements. It'll also expand on the statement of the management responsibilities to include assessing the going concern ability, as well as other auditor responsibilities in more detail and depth, including the planning scope and timing of the audit, significant findings, and other matters. When engaged by the entity, the opinion could include key audit matters, which will be communicated in the report. But that would be some sort of conversation between management and the audit committee here of whether that's something that would ever be wanted as far as that goes. So this will be effective for this year. The next slide just kind of shows how the presentation will be broken out a little bit more in depth. For the most part, there are a lot of similar sections, but it's just broken out more to give more information to the users for more understandability and providing a more thorough and detailed bit of information. So moving on to our normal presentation, these are the required communications. I think we'll just kind of highlight here on this slide more so the scope of the audit. We will be auditing the basic financial statements of DASNY for the year end March 31, 2022, and perform the audit in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States and the standards for financial audits contained in government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States, commonly referred to as GAS. The audit will include performing a consideration of the internal controls over financial reporting as a basis for determining our audit procedures in those circumstances, but not for the purpose of expressing an opinion. We will also perform an examination of the compliance with DASNY's requirements of Part 201.3 of Title II of the official compilation of code, rules, and regulations of the state of New York, in accordance with the attestation standards established by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, as well as government auditing standards. There will be several deliverables that we will provide. They're very similar to what you've seen in the past. It'll be our audit report on the basic financial statements, the report on internal controls over financial reporting, commonly referred to as the Yellow Book report, the audit of the report on the supplementary information, the report on compliance with those requirements of section 201.3 of Title II, our typical audit letter communication of matters to the audit committee, the AUC 260 letters. If necessary, we'll issue a management letter. And lastly, later on in 22, we will be issuing our audit reports on the individual financial statements, which there appear to be 16 for this coming year. The next few items here we'll cover on the next coming slides. This slide is just kind of a context of materiality in the audit of the basic financial statements. I think of importance here is the third bullet here, where judgments about materiality involve both qualitative and quantitative. So while there's a lot of auditor professional judgment in here, it takes into consideration the amount of those financial statements as well as other qualitative information that we would consider as part of the audit. With regards to our timeline, no changes really to our timeline from what we've had in the past. We will shortly be beginning our audit timeframe starting in November here, doing our planning and risk assessment procedures. We will perform some interim control test work in the January through March timeframe, and then perform the majority of our substantive procedures in the April through June timeframe, concluding with the presentation to the audit committee in late June. Lastly, between July and September, we'll typically perform the procedures over those individual financial statements and issue those opinions by September 30th. The next couple of slides are our key audit areas. These are relatively consistent with the past. As it relates to cash investments in bonds and notes outstanding, we will continue to confirm a sample of cash and investment balances, as well as confirm 100% of the public state debt. We will perform independent price test work of all the marketable securities held by DASNY at year end, and review some of the disclosures such as GASB 72, the fair value measurement note, GASB 7, advanced refundings, and GASB 86, certain debt disclosures. For leases and loans receivable, we will do a roll forward procedures, as well as test the details during the year that are components of that roll forward to evaluate the existence and accuracy of the information. We will also do a search for unrecorded liabilities, perform some analytical procedures over payroll. As it relates to your OPEB liability, we will continue to involve our actuarial specialists who will review the key assumptions that go into that estimate to determine the reasonableness of the overall valuation, as well as reviewing the overall disclosures. We will also obtain third-party confirmations from attorneys that represent DASNY in a variety of matters that are significant to the overall financial statements. And then we will also involve our tax specialists and information technology folks from a risk assessment standpoint to ensure that there are no risks that exist, whether it relates to your systems or cybersecurity or things of that nature. Our approach to fraud risk does include performing additional procedures. It's important to look to where the fraud risk may lie. There's always a fraud risk for every financial statement related to the management override of controls. So we continue to evaluate that management override of controls, specifically related to the various journal entries that management can post on an annual basis, reviewing some of the controls that are in place to mitigate that risk, as well as performing procedures over what would be considered higher risk journal entries that may get recorded on an annual basis. This next slide is just a listing of the involvement of others. We've talked a little bit about the technology assurance, actuary, and tax specialists, but of importance here is for internal audit. We do intend to use approximately 160 hours of assistance from DASNY's internal audit for this year's financial statements. We've listed out a few of those procedures that would be performed by them as part of this audit, as part of this plan. They have been performed in the past, and we look to have those same types of procedures performed for the coming year. This next slide is just a little tidbit on the cybersecurity considerations. This is just some of the factors that of consideration as we kind of go through cybersecurity. This is not meant to address a sort of a known risk, but more so to evaluate management's policies and procedures to mitigate that risk, to determine if there's any incremental risk to our financial statements based on any issues that may have arisen or other matters that may be identified.
Jeff, may I interrupt Sal again? Cybersecurity is a huge issue for me. It's a huge concern. As John Gardner likes to point out, people outside of our company, of our organization, think that we may be a bank. We issue billions of dollars in bonds, and good Lord, that makes us a target. Do you all employ the services of consultants when it comes down? Do you have the expertise in-house to literally look at the quality of our cybersecurity system? Or do you actually, do we pay for you to sell that work to somebody on the outside?
Al, if you don't mind, I'll jump in. We do have the technical experts within KPMG at the request of meeting with John last year as a part of planning for
Yes.
the audit. He expressed that this was a risk and concern on the 4 month on your mind. So we did have some of those specialists come in and meet with your CIO and understand where they were in their process of evaluating cybersecurity. As you recall, you did have an assessment by a third party a couple of years ago. And what we
Yes.
did with experts is talk to them about where they're at and prioritizing and implementing some of those recommendations. We did give some feedback, but for all intents and purposes, high level, from this initial, discussion, the CIO and management was moving forward with implementing it. It just takes a long time
course.
and having resources. To answer your second part of your question, we absolutely could do a deeper dive, further recommendations, something very almost similar to what you had performed before, but in different manners, and we're happy to assist in any way that's needed. From a risk, from a financial statement audit risk, as Jeff said, we do limited procedures, but it might not be to the level of assurance that you're talking about.
Well, you're kind, Marie, to walk me through the history because I had forgotten some of it. So thank you very much for that. It's management's decision, but the audit chair obviously is going to have some views and should have some views about whether or not we're doing enough in this regard. I know Ruben, we've had several discussions about it, and Ruben has had a cybersecurity presentation done. We're doing, I think, a good job. I'm not disparaging the quality of the cybersecurity firewalls we're putting up. I just want to know whether is it an AICPA protocol for KPMG to say, we've evaluated your cybersecurity risks and we think that you're on the right side of secure. That doesn't say that we will not have cybersecurity risks, and it doesn't say that we won't have a cybersecurity problem. But I mean, I'm informed truly by John Gardner's view that people on the outside look at us as, we must be worth the efforts of the bad guys, and I worry about that. So I'll spend some time with Jeff talking about this. I know John will as we go forward, but first I need to spend some time with Ruben just to make sure that he is comfortable with the risk assessment that we've got so far. And he and I have not had that conversation.
And to your point, Al, it's evolving. These individuals are, technology and everything is changing daily, and it's so fast. And
True.
so the assessment that you had, I want to say 3 years ago, maybe
It was
even
3 years ago.
Right. It may be time to update, and also you've evolved. I do agree, having discussed with the state that they see sometimes a risk is that the component units who have also access into SSF, that might be a backdoor, and they also see themselves as one of the biggest banks in
Sure.
America.
Yes, they do, and rightly so.
And rightly so. So I think your concern is more, your concern for this risk is warranted, and something that is on the forefront of minds.
Thank you, Marie.
And Al, I can say that Ruben and I have talked about this subject, and I think we're both very much of the same mind.
Okay, that's John. You're the audit chair. I will
Yeah.
take your lead. It's just that in other parts of my life, I have greater cybersecurity risks, and therefore my risk profile is higher.
Yes.
I mean, I think DASNY is doing a great job, but I worry. It is something that I think we should worry about.
We absolutely should worry about it. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. I'll leave it alone.
Okay, So I will.
Sorry, Jeff, I
No,
interrupted you.
No worries. Important topics obviously need to be brought up as they come, so no worries. The only last section I have before I'll turn it back to Marie is just the new and emerging accounting pronouncements. Marie alluded to this earlier on, but for the March 31, 2022 year, there will be no new accounting pronouncements. All those accounting pronouncements have been adopted previously. The next big year will be the 2023 year, specifically the top two here, GASB 87 on leases, as well as GASB number 91 on conduit debt obligations. There are a couple other information pieces in here. These have been presented in the past. We continue to work and discuss these with management as they have some questions and concerns as they go through this process, and we'll continue to kind of be plugged in for the next year as they get closer to the adoption of these for your March 31, 2023 year end. But they're here for you if you wanted to take a look to have a reminder of what some of those pronouncements were.
Jeff, on GASB 94, the triple P, public-private partnership pronouncement, do you all have a white paper on that some of us could, if we were curious enough about it, could take a look at?
We can look in to see if we have a white paper. I'm not sure if we do. We could also just provide summary and look into it as it relates to DASNY for you.
Okay. Okay, no, either one of those, Marie, would be fine for me. I'm not paying enough attention to GASB 94, and it occurs to me that I probably need to. Thank you.
No worries.
Absolutely, we'll provide that to you, Al. And if there's no other questions on the new accounting pronouncements for in the future, KPMG, in addition to our diversity transparency report that we're going to have, we also have our audit quality transparency report. I've provided our 2020 to manage to be evaluated, but we have final to the PCAOB, who is the regulator for our public audits. When I say public audits, it's audits that are in accordance with the SEC requirements.
Sure.
That your range, but that PCAOB audit has been conducted over KPMG. The report will be coming out for the 21 year shortly. The holdup is because when the PCAOB releases that report, they release all big four accounting firms results at the same time. We are happy and proud to see continued improvement in our results over those type of our audits. At that time, we'll be updating our audit transparency report, and I'll provide it to management.
Okay.
The next slide is our shared responsibilities over independence. At this point in time, we believe we are in fact in appearance independent with DASNY as we go through and conduct the audit. And Jeff, going to the next slide, here is the management responsibilities, KPMG's responsibilities and objectives. It is consistent with previous years in that those charged with governance and management are responsible for the financial statements and the internal controls that KPMG is then conducting our audits over. And lastly, the last slide here is inquiries in accordance with the auditing standards. These are meant to be memory joggers for you. If you have any knowledge of anything as you look through these questions that we as your external auditors need to be aware of, please by all means let me know, and as well as we can also have conversations throughout the year as usual if anything comes up to the extent of these that we should be made aware of as we plan our audit. That concludes our presentation today. I know it was 30 slides, but I hope you found it valuable and informative. And does anyone have any further questions?
Yeah, I've got two questions, Marie. You talked in the first part of your presentation about the environmental disclosure that we're going to be addressing. I actually read a little bit of the SEC's release on that. How would that affect us? Are we gonna worry about what kind of light bulbs we're using, or how is that gonna affect DASNY?
You know, that's a great question, John, because in talking with Ruben and management, that was also one of the questions. Where is this actually going to come to fruition to have an impact? Could it ultimately impact your bond rating? At this point in time, it's unknown. This is evolving so quickly. It's something that's in the marketplace that is being looked at the moment. Whatever initiatives that you do have, I think they're trying to make it, as you know, somewhat vague. What's what initiatives are best for the company. Every company is unique, every business is unique. And therefore, if it's too prescribed, to your point of light bulbs being this way, is
Yeah.
it really an initiative that's meaningful? I'm hoping that the regulators don't get that prescribed, that it could be initiatives that are meaningful, impactful, that you're able as DASNY, as a company, to implement and have that change. At the moment, it's still evolving and it's still in the vague area. Even if we give you an as test at the right now, that there's no requirements for that, right? The only benefit would be the bond market would be aware of it. You could share it with the bond market. You could share it with your customers. You could share it with the construction as you're evaluating it. So there's not a one-for-one that this would have that direct impact at this moment, because there isn't really a regulation around it.
Sure,
And
sure.
still so new, that fallout of that impact hasn't been quantified or determined yet.
Are we going to get a rating of some kind based on our practices?
Not that I would be providing, not that
Yeah.
I'm right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would just, yes, there could be comparison to your peers of how you're performing.
Yeah.
The moment
Let me just tell you when I read some of this SEC release, and God knows I didn't read all of it, but the impression that I got is that there are companies in various energy intensive industries that are bragging about their greenness. So if you're one of those companies and you are using huge sums of electricity or huge sums of any kind of energy, and you're pounding your chest about your greenness, you're going to have to back it up. The SEC is no longer going to let companies get away with, just kind of throwing this stuff around. But I think that for a reporting entity like us, we don't do anything that's particularly energy intensive. We just, we turn on the lights, we turn on our computers. Maybe we could use more rechargeable batteries, but it isn't gonna amount to a hill of beans for us.
For you, yep.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm not aware of us bragging about our greenness either. But the message may be, if you want to brag about your greenness, you're going to have to be accountable for it. And then the other question I've got is the new audit report standards. Are those specific to governmental entities, or are we going to see this across the board?
Across the board. So public companies, the SEC has already changed their opinion. They have a paragraph already on critical audit matters. It's been evolving. This is the AICPA. So across the board, the opinions will be changing for all entities. The difference, and when I say critical audit matters, they've already changed. The SEC public opinions have already changed. When AICPA evaluated it for their type of audits and entities, they did not take that critical audit matter requirement the same. They have key audit matters that could be included in the opinion and communicated upon agreement with management and the external auditors. I was happy to see that, personally happy to see that was not a standard requirement, but it's really trying to make the opinion more streamlined, where the opinion's the first section. You don't have to dig through responsibilities to find the opinion.
Yeah, yeah. Does the going concern analysis have any real meaning for an entity like DASNY?
That not as much, because the state of New York could always support, always continue to have taxes.
Right.
And so that's where it's where applicable. I have only seen, and you probably know the states, there's only limited one state that has a going concern at the moment. So I would say it is not a risk for you in the state of New York, to have.
So it's really more a state of New York analysis than a DASNY analysis.
Well, because you can always have state appropriations to support, and you do get some appropriations for from time to time.
Yeah.
Marie, is there an extrapolation that that the SEC could do with respect to a DASNY. We do not have going concern issues, but folk with whom we do business may. And I raise the question because of DASNY's commitment to diversity and to bringing outside contractors who are diverse contractors into the DASNY fold. Do we have an obligation in any way to determine whether or not there may be a going concern for a business with which we have transactions, particularly minority businesses?
Yeah, and I think, Al, that depends. I think adding the going concern rate in the audit report is trying to highlight it and bring it to fruition for anyone to be able to identify that risk of an entity easier.
Sure.
And I say it depends, and because as you're evaluating, your receivables, is that entity able to pay that? Do you
Sure.
need, is it a valid receivable at the time? So there is an impact of that.
And therefore a heightened concern. Therefore, DASNY is going to have to be a bit more careful, or maybe, about the quality of the companies with which it is doing business.
Well, I think DASNY could look to the financial statements now and readily see if there's a concern by the external auditors. So we're trying to have the opinion highlight that in a way that's easier to pull out, and so that you could then, as management, make that type of decision. I think having going concern in here doesn't necessarily mean that more companies have going concern.
Right.
I think to bring it to light and make it, the forefront of that conversation for that entity, if there is one.
Okay, fair enough.
Before a going concern wasn't in the opinion, you could have
Right.
had a matter paragraph, but again, it would get lost.
Yeah, I'm wondering how we're going to protect ourselves adequately. What the agency has done is to add another layer of inquiry that we're going to have to be sure we cover off on.
You have a going concern in your last audit financials.
Yeah.
At all.
Okay, no, thanks, thank you.
I had a slightly different, as long as we're talking about our reaction to the format, my concern is that it's very subjective.
You think?
Yeah.
And it's ontological, John. It actually, it exceeds reason. It's godlike. It actually moves in the direction of religion, to your point earlier.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay.
Sorry.
We may conclude the audit report with the word amen.
Hey, John, I want to just add one commentary on the ESG, if I might.
Yep.
Our conversations with KPMG are primarily around DASNY does a lot of work in ESG anyway. And so how do we confirm to the outside entities? But B, and I think more importantly, as we work with our conduit clients, we want to kind of put our money where our mouth is when we're asking them what their practices are.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at how can we balance, memorialize what we have, making sure that the policies are in place without overburdening ourselves or, quite candidly, providing a cost to evaluate something that's not really important to the end result. So that's how we're framing it up as we look at it. And as Marie said, we'll be talking to them over the next month or two about kind of how we do that.
That's very interesting. So when we, for example, do a construction project, do we analyze it from that point of view? Do we look at the greenness?
Well, typically our clients will have some type of a environmental program. And what we want to do is make sure our projects help with that. And so we may either react to, yes, we can do that for you, or be more proactive and say, have you thought about this as an option to add value sustainability wise based on our experience? Not prescribing they do something, but making sure that we know what is best practices, what's available to our clients. And we think that's a good service for both our public and private clients.
So this will be an active area for the, in the audit reports to come, or in the financial.
Well, that's
statements.
right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. That's
Maureen,
very good.
before you all disconnect, let me say that you and Jeff have it's been a fantastic report today. John already alluded to it. You all have done a fantastic job of just making us aware of things we ought to be thinking about. And I'm not suggesting you haven't done that in the past, but this report was particularly informative, at least for me. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
I second that. You guys were on your game today. Absolutely. And Jeff, we're looking forward to working with you.
Absolutely. Same here, John.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything further we need to do, or are we going to have the internal audit report? Are we ready for that?
You're here.
Kathy? Are you ready?
Yep, thank you,
Here we
Chairman.
go.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to start off with some mandatory communication. The Internal Audit Department Charter and the auditing standards require certain communications to be made to the Audit Committee annually. Every year, the internal audit team members complete an independence and objectivity statement to affirm to the best of their knowledge whether they are aware of any potential threats that might impair their independence and objectivity. And they acknowledge that they're required to report any future impairment if and when it occurs. The signed statement acknowledges that they have read and understand the IIA standards on independence and objectivity, the IIA Code of Ethics and DASNY's Code of Ethics, as well as DASNY's internal audit policies and procedures. There have been no impairments to date. Additionally, the audit charter reflects internal audit department's purpose, authority, and responsibility, and recognizes that the department is governed by the mandatory elements of the IIA's International Professional Practices Framework. Does anybody have any questions? All right. Moving on, I'd like to start with the status of our plan and noting the progress that has been made. So included in your materials is the internal audit report. Starting on the PDF page 3, overall there are 12 projects that have been completed and 7 are in process at various stages as reflected. One of the areas I wanted to highlight was that we are in the planning phase of an equipment inventory engagement. We're going to commence testing once everyone returns to the office at the request of executive management. This was added to the plan from the original plan approved by the audit committee. We'll be sampling to validate inventory of some equipment that was deployed for people to work from home. Our IS department is in the process of setting up an asset management application, which will help with the maintenance of inventory going forward. Also, as you probably recall, we postponed performing an audit of grants last year due to the lack of processing. Grants started being processed again at the beginning of March of this year when the budget bulletin was lifted. So we're working on an audit in that area now. At this time, I'd like to request to go into executive session.
Do I have to make, I will make that motion. May I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss the financial and credit history of particular corporations, proposals, pending or current litigation, and the employment histories of particular persons with matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of particular persons.
It is Joan. I make the motion.
And I'll second it. It's Beryl.
Thank you. Is anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? The motion is passed. We shall go into executive session. At this point, I think the KPMG people, thank you very much. Your presence was essential, and now it is no longer. So, thank you all. And we want to keep board members, Ruben, Paul Koopman, Nadine, Kim Ellis, Kathy Ebert, and Karen Ellinger on the call or on the
So,
meeting.
Okay,
So
and let me,
this is Ken. I should jump, right?
Ken?
No, I should say.
I think board members can.
Yeah.
Can't just stay.
Yeah, you're here.
Okay. Okay.
You're here,
Thank
and
you.
Ricardo. Let me get my script back in front of me. I'd like to note that we are back in open session. We have just concluded an executive session, and that no action was taken in executive session other than to return to public session. Is there any business that anyone would like to bring before the committee? Hearing none, could I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll move it, Beryl.
Thank you, Beryl.
I'll
Joan,
second
thank
it,
you.
Beryl.
Is anyone opposed or abstaining? Hearing none, I will take that as a vote to adjourn, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We will see you tomorrow morning at 9:30.